At the beginning of a row, a sheaf opposite proves. If the sheaf that he held to bring into town was forgotten, they agree that it is not shikha. And these are the beginnings of rows. Two, two who began from the middle of the row. This one facing north, this one facing south, and they forgot before them and behind them that before them is shikacha and that behind them is not shikacha. If one began from the beginning of a row and he forgot before him and behind him, that before him is not shikacha and that behind him is shikacha, because you shall not go back applies to it. This is the general rule. Whatever is included in you shall not go back is shikacha, and what is not included in you shall not go back is not shikacha. Okay. Two sheaves, shikacha, but three are not shikacha. Two heaps of olives and carobs, shikacha, but three are not shikacha. Two flax stalks, shikacha, but three are not shikacha. Two grape parrot, but three are not parrot. Two ears of corn, lechet, but three are not lechet. These are according to Beis Hillel. And regarding all of them, Beis Shammai says three for the poor and four for the owner. Okay.
Okay. Now, not just about numbers, but also when you've got size, that also is going to exclude you from having from having to leave it for shechecha. And this is learned out from the fact that that you can't go to pick it up. So, shechecha is something that you could normally pick up, but when it's so big that you would not be able to pick it up by yourself, then it's exempt from the law of shechicha, and that measure Chazal determined is two se'ah or sa'atayim, right? Sa'atayim is two se'ah, and once a pile is so big that you could not pick it up by yourself, then there's no din of shechicha. So says the Mishnah, ha'omer sheyesh bo sa'asayim u'she'achacho eno shechicha. That's what we just said. If it's got two se'ah, then there's no din of shechicha. Ushnei omarim ubahem sa'asayim. But if you have two omarim, and each one is a se'ah, okay? Rabban Gamliel omer lebal habayis v'chachamim omrim la'aniyim. No, because you got two piles and each one is too small to be for sa'asayim, and therefore each one, even if you forgot both of them, that's still shechicha. So now I'm a Rabban Gamliel. So Rabban Gamliel says that doesn't make sense. It says if you have more piles, does that improve or the position of the balabais, or does it make it worse? Like if you and he's thinking of the case where if you left two, it belongs to Aniyim, but if you left three, it belongs to the balabais. Okay, so he's saying that more is better for the balabais. Okay, Amrullah, Yupikocho. Yeah, his position is strengthened from having more. Let's see where you're going with this. Amar lahem umayim bizman shehu omer echad ubosa asayim shechacho. So if it's one omer and it had time and he forgot it, eno shechacha, then that's not shechacha. Shnei omerim ubahem asayim eno din shelo yehu shechacha. It's a kal v'chomer. Because you still got the time, but now you've got two piles instead of one, and two piles can't be worse than one. And Chachamim said, "Come on, Amru lo, imamata ba'omer shehu kegadish." This is not the reason why Sa'atayim is patur is because it's considered like a stack as opposed to a pile, which is I don't know if the English words actually have that connotation, but like something big. You've got a gadish. A gadish is something that you couldn't pick up by yourself. Okay, that's what's patur. So ma b'shnei omrim shehen kekrikos. You're going to say that two. You're going to say that about two piles, which is like a bundle, which are like two bundles. Nope, your kal v'chomer does not work, and the halacha does not follow Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel, sorry. Okay. Mishna Zayin. Kama sheyesh ba sa'asayim. Okay, so you've got standing grain, which is sa'atayim in measure. And he forgot that while he was reaping. Also, no din of shechacha because it's too big. Okay. Ein ba sa'asayim aval hu re'uya lasos sa'asayim. Okay. So now what happens is that it doesn't actually have two se'ah of produce in there, but that's because it's been a low rain year, so the produce is very thin.
Mhm.
Okay, but the area that he forgot is still a time of what would normally be produced. Afilu he shel tofach, even if it's shel tofach is
Vetchings,
uh, right.
they call it, even if it is of vetchlings.
Vetchlings, right. Even if it's of vetchlings. Ro'ino saki ilu hi ana vashel seorim. We judge it as if it's made of the like the finest barley with the biggest grains, and therefore that's how we would estimate the two se'ah as to whether he has to leave it for the poor. Okay. Ches. Hakama matzeles is a omer ve'es hakama. So standing grain can save an omer, in other words, a pile, ve'es hakama, and also standing grain. Okay, ha'omer eno matzil lo es ha'omer ve'lo es hakama. But a pile cannot save either another pile or standing grain. Okay, what does that mean? Um, Ezo kama shehi matzeles is omer. How do we have a case where standing grain can save an omer? Kol she'ena shichecha afilu kelach echad. So if you've got standing grain that is not considered shichecha because it's
Mhm.
still it's still about to be reaped. And I mean, you could have people simultaneously harvesting and gathering. Okay, so the harvesters are going and cutting things down, and the gatherers are coming up behind them and picking up piles. Okay, now one of the gatherers forgot one of the piles, but it's standing next to a piece of standing grain, which the harvesters haven't come to yet. So that
Mhm.
is still and it's still within reach of that standing grain. Right. So if you bent the standing grain over, it would touch the pile, and you would be able to reap them all together. That the standing grain then would save that pile from becoming peah, from becoming shechecha, even if it's only one stalk that can reach there. So that's enough that it needs to be saved for the balabais. However, as the Mishnah says, the pile cannot save another pile. So just because a pile that he forgot is within reach of another pile that did not forget, that doesn't save it. Okay, and that's it.
Okay.
Back to Dala Dala.
Um, the pay is given while attached to the soil. In the case of suspended vines and palm trees, the householder takes down and distributes to the poor. Reb Shimon says so too in the case of smooth nut trees. Even if 99 say to distribute and one says to snatch, this one they heed, for he spoke according to the law. In the case of suspended vines and palm trees, if it is not so, even if it is 99 say to snatch and one says to distribute, this one they heed, for he spoke according to the law. If a person took part of the pay and cast it on the rest, he has nothing of it. If it fell upon it or spread his cloak over it, they remove it from him. And the same applies to gleanings and forgotten sheaf.
Okay.
Okay.
Uktzin.
Okay. Gimel Dalet. Gimel base. One cuts off flesh from a person or from a domestic animal or from a wild animal or from fowl or from the carcass of a non-kosher bird and caleb in the villages and all other field greens with the exception of shamarkim and mushrooms. Rabbi Yehuda says with the exception of the field leek, pulsum, and parsley. Rabbi Shimon says with the exception of cardones. Rabbi Yossi says with the exception of kalushin. These require thought and hechsher. The carcass of a non-kosher animal anywhere and the carcass of a kosher bird in villages require thought but do not require hechsher. The carcass of a kosher animal anywhere and the carcass of a kosher bird and caleb in the marketplaces require neither thought nor hechsher. Reb Shimon says also a camel, hare, hyrax, and pig. Dill, once it has imparted its flavor to a pot of food, is no longer subject to the laws of Truma and does not contract Tuma's Oakland. Branch shoots and those of Adal and the leaves of the wild loaf do not contract Tumas Okalim until they are sweetened. And Reb Shimon says also the shoots of Pakos are like them.
Okay.
Okay. And Okay. Hey, hey. Flowing water is like a spring, and trickling water is like a mikveh. The tzaddik testified that when the flowing water is more than the trickling water, it's valid. And if trickling water was made to flow, it may be blocked even with a stick or even with a cane, even by a zav or a zava, and then one may go down and immerse oneself. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi says one may not stop a flow with anything that is susceptible to tumah. If a wave that became separated consisted of 40 saw and it fell on a person or utensils, they become tahor. In any place that contains 40 saw, one can immerse oneself and one can immerse things. Hence, one may immerse things in pits or in ditches or in a donkey track that is mingled in the countryside. Beishamai says one may immerse things in a river that flows down a mountain. Hillel says one may not immerse anything therein. They agree, however, that one may make an enclosure and with utensils and then immerse himself therein, but the utensils themselves used to make the enclosure are not deemed as immersed. Any water that mingles with a mikveh is like a mikveh. In the case of holes in the cave or cracks in the cave, one may immerse something in them however they are. But in the case of a dugout under a cave, one may not immerse anything in it unless there is an opening the size of a water skin tube. Rabbi Yehuda said, when is this so? When it supports itself. But if it does not support itself, one may not immerse something in it, however it is.
One may immerse in it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, we have Caleb.
Mm-hmm.
Caleb. Okay. Base Gimel. These are tahor among the earthenware and utensils. A tray that has no rim, an open side fire pan, a toasted pan, pipes, even though they are bent, and even they are capable of containing a kakav made of for a bread basket. A tefi, which was adapted for covering grapes, a barrel for swimmers, a barrel-shaped handle set into the wall near the bottom of a machaz, a bed, a chair, a bench, a table, a ship, and a candelabra, all made of earthenware are tahor. This is the general rule. Any of the earthenware utensils which have no interior have no degree of tumah upon their exterior. A lantern which has a receptacle for oil is tummy, while if it does not have such a receptacle, it's tahor. A potter's form which he begins with his tahor, while the one which he finishes is tameh. The funnel of householders is tahor, while a peddler's is tameh, since it is used for measurement. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda ben Becerra. Rabbi Kiva says, since he tilts on its side and allows the buyer to smell the contents. The cover of wine jugs and oil jugs and the cover of Narayan barrels are tahor, but if it was prepared for some use, they are tameh. The cover of a stew pot, when it has a hole in it or has a protrusion, it is tahor. If it does not have a hole and no protrusion, it is tameh, since it strains the vegetables into it. Rabbi Eliezer ben Zadok said, since she overturns the mass and cooked vegetables upon it. Okay. And Baba Basra. Okay, base Vav. A young dove which was found within 50 cubits of a dovecote belongs to the owner of the dovecote. Beyond 50 cubits, it belongs to his finder. If it was found between two dovecotes, if it was closer to this one, it is his. If it's closer to that one, it is his. If it was equally distant from both, they divide it. One must distance a tree 25 cubits from a town. In the case of carob or sycamore trees, 50 cubits. Abba Shaul says any non-fruit-bearing tree requires 50 cubits. If the town was there first, he cuts down the tree and does not pay compensation. But if the tree was there first, he cuts it down and pays compensation. If there is doubt whether this one was first or that one was, he cuts it down and does not pay compensation. One may distance a fixed threshing floor 50 cubits from a town. One may not establish a fixed threshing floor within his own property unless he owns 50 cubits of land in every direction, and he must distance it from the plantings of his neighbor and from his plowed over areas so that it should not damage them. Okay.
Okay.
And so, okay, above Aleph. There were 13 collection chests, 13 tables, and 13 prostrations in the temple. Members of Rabbi Gamil's family and Rabbi Hananiah's family would prostrate themselves 14 times. And where was the extra prostration? Opposite the wood chamber, for they had a tradition from their ancestors that the ark was hidden there. It once happened that a Kohen who was occupied at his task noticed that a certain stone of the floor was different from the others. He came to tell his colleague, but before he had concluded the matter, his soul departed from him. Thus they knew with certainty that the ark had been hidden there. And where did they prostrate themselves? 13 times. four in the north, four in the south, three in the east, and two in the west, opposite the 13 gates. The southern gate is adjacent to the west, the upper gate, the kindling gate, the firstling gates, the water gate, and the water gate. And why is it called the water gate? Because it is through it that they would bring the flagon of water for libation on Sukkot. Reb Yaakov, Elias ben Yaakov says, through it the waters trickle and are destined to issue forth from beneath the threshold of the temple. Opposite these southern gates to the on the north, adjacent to the west, Yechana's gate, the offering gate, the women's gate, the music gate. And why was it called Yechana's gate? Because through it Yechana went to his exile. In the east, Nicanor gates, which had two wickets, one on its right and one on its left, and two gates to the west that were unnamed. Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
All right.
Okay.
Perfect.
Well,
Thank you so much. I will see you, Mr. Shem, tomorrow. Have a
okay.
great day. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.